Alright, who's ready to eat themselves into a top ramen-fueled oblivion? I know I am, especially after learning about just how vast the inequality gap is across the world, and how it's continuing to grow at an alarming rate. As the most powerful figures in the world gathered together in Davos, Switzerland for the World Economic Forum's annual meeting,
it's a privilege to be here at this forum where leaders in business, science, art, diplomacy, and world affairs have gathered for many, many years to discuss how we can advance prosperity, security, and peace.
A new report was released stating explicitly that the sheer wealth of the 1% across the world is built on the backs of low-paid workers, often women, who are paid poverty wages and denied basic rights. And I'm sure by now you've heard Bernie talk about how the 1% in America owns more wealth than the 99%.
All of the wealth and much of the income is going to the top 1%.
Or to break it down even more sickeningly, the 3 richest Americans have the same amount of wealth as the poorest half of the US population. And as bad as that is, I wanted to explain just a wee bit more so you understand how broke we all are in comparison to the guys getting tax cut pocket change to stock their mini fridges on their private jets. Last year saw the biggest increase in the number of billionaires in history, with one more added every 2 days. Last year, 82% of the world's global wealth generated went to just 1% of the world's population. And among those taking home the big checks heavier than Melania's conscience, 9 out of 10 are men, whose fortunes grew by $762 billion in 2017. All while the poorest half of humanity saw no increase in their wealth at all. But this should come as no surprise to anyone who's been paying attention, especially here in the United States, where convincing Republicans to support raising the minimum wage is like pulling teeth out with a melted spoon. Because that's too much to ask. I mean, the world would spin out of control if we'd have regular people eating food instead of Kraft mac and cheese. Can't have that. But anyway, you may be asking, what is the reason for their boom and everyone else's stagnation? Well, let's take a think. What just happened here in the US that some could say helps contribute to the wealth of the 1%? Ah, that's right, tax cuts for the multi-billion-dollar corporations. One of the main factors driving massive inequality is the excessive financial returns to company owners and shareholders at the expense of ordinary workers and the rest of the economy. Translation: rich individuals and corporations' ability to use tax havens to hide trillions from tax authorities, as well as public policy that reinforces market conditions that push down wages and infringe on labor rights. Shocking, right? I mean, who would have thought that billionaires would be the ones to profit most from tax cuts? After the latest tax bill passed, I thought the rest of us were going to be splashing out on diamond necklaces and caviar. I mean, look at good old working class American Paul Ryan. He's no billionaire, but he reaped the benefits, so there's a chance we all will, right? Oh, that's right, we all don't have the Koch brothers wiring us $500,000 in campaign contributions days after passing the $1.5 trillion tax bill that takes from the working people to give to the super rich. But I don't want to spend this whole clip ragging on American economic policies that benefit the few. This issue is global, none more prominent and important than the gender pay gap. That at current rates of change, the global economic gender gap at work will not be closed for another 217 years. Now, this has been attested to outsourcing led by economic strategies that prioritize cheap and precarious work, most of which is done by women across the world. But even when you take a closer look at some of the most developed countries in the world, gender disparity is still a prominent issue. When you look at the UK, for instance, the gap between women and men earning over £100,000 a year has widened by 23% over 5 years. All over the world, marginalized groups are stagnating or suffering at the expense of those adding to their already insurmountable bank balance. These latest figures are not surprising, but they do help shed further light on why fighting for minimum wage and gender equality in the workplace is needed every single day. Follow me on Instagram at Francis M. Maxwell and on Twitter also at Francis M. Maxwell. Like and share the video. Continue to resist.